This project is about creating a trading agent. I enable the Help Slide Out panel. The decision of this agent is to buy shares in the stock market, or not, thus I click to add its negation before saving. Then I add an initial scenario where the 5-period moving average, MA5, rises and crosses the 20-period moving average, MA20. While typing the text, you can notice that I see the two options on the top right of the editor, buy and not buy, in blue boxes. These two options form columns, and after defining the scenario I can click in a column to enable the respective option. The three yellow buttons on the top left are the possible actions in this editor. To add an initial scenario, to manage elements, and to add an option. As soon as I finish typing I press enter and I have created my first element of a scenario. If I want I can add more elements, however this one suffices, so I click save. This first initial scenario indicates to buy the shares, thus I click in its column to enable this option. My second initial scenario is when the relative strength index of 14 periods, RSI 14, is close to the saturation level. While typing the text you can notice on the top of the screen beneath the trading agent the name of this project, the 4 steps for developing a decision policy. We are now at the first step, initial scenarios and options. In the second step I will be able to indicate if any of my initial scenarios are compatible. In the third step I will be able to resolve conflicts between options enabled by the same scenario, or combination of scenarios, and in the last step I can review my policy. This initial scenario is an indication for not buying a stock's shares. The not buy column appears yellow, indicating that this option is not yet enabled in any initial scenario. After I click in the checkbox appearing in the not buy column, the yellow color will disappear. If I go directly to step 3, conflict resolution, I can see that there is no conflict to solve. However, in step 2 I can combine the two initial scenarios as they are compatible. In the combined scenario I can only decide by adding more context. I prefer to buy the shares if the short-term trend is bullish. I add the context, and as soon as I finish and press enter a new element is created. An element is a piece of knowledge or fact that we know is valid. As I do not want to add more elements to this extended scenario, I click save and I see beneath the finish button the decision under the new context. Now I want to add more context for preferring not to buy a stock's shares. Thus, in the case that the trading volume is lower than the 20-period average I would not buy. I enter the new element, and as I do not want to add more context I click save. Now, Raison realizes that I have added two new extensions of the combined initial scenario supporting the two conflicting options, buy and not buy, proposes the combination of the two new contexts and asks me if the new combined scenario is coherent. I click yes, and now Raison asks me how do I choose the best option in this combined scenario. I can choose without additional information that in this case I would not buy the shares. Subsequently, Raison asks me if I could add more context to prefer to buy the shares. I click no, finishing with conflict resolution, and I can review my policy. By clicking on the top left of the screen the menu shows me the possible actions and I click run. My application is automatically generated and I can test my policy by adding elements and clicking run. Thus, in the case of the combination of the initial scenarios, both options are valid, while if I add more context, for example that the trading volume is lower than the 20-period average, then, if I click run I get the option to not buy the shares. So you see the not buy option with a green check icon while the buy option has a red icon.